Welcome back to the deep dive. I have to say, looking at the stack of research on my desk today, it feels like we're looking at a glitch in the matrix.
A glitch in the matrix.
You know that feeling when something you take for granted as a fundamental law of the universe just sort of bends?
It is a bit disorienting. I mean, usually when we do these dives, there are certain constants we rely on.
Exactly. The sun rises in the east, and Singapore is the Asian tiger that, never stumbles.
Right. It's the Switzerland of Asia, the gold standard.
Efficiency, political boredom, in a good way. But this report, it's titled Singapore at the Brink, Navigating the 2026 Economic Siege. And it's dated just this month, February 2026. The picture it paints, it's not a crack in the facade. It sounds like the whole building is shaking.
Shaking is absolutely the right word. This analysis is basically a weather report for a perfect storm.
Right.
We're not looking at one bad policy or a single bad quarter. This is a convergence. You've got political erosion, infrastructure chokeholds, and rivals who are suddenly smelling blood in the water.
And the numbers are, honestly, they're shocking. The headline forecast for 2026 growth has been slashed to between 1% and 3%.
1 to 2%.
For a mature economy in the West, maybe that's a Tuesday. But for Singapore, that feels like stalling out.
It is. And the mission for our deep dive today is to figure out how we got here and how so quickly.
Because it doesn't sound like an accident.
No, the source material makes it clear this is structural. The Singapore model that economists have praised for 50 years, it's facing a stress test it might not pass.
So let's unpack this. Because the report starts somewhere I didn't expect. Not with tech, not with trade, but with Singaporean politics.
Right. Which, for an investor, is usually the most boring and best part of the Singapore story. Predictability.
Or at least it used to be.
Yeah.
But the fallout from the November 2025 general election, it suggests that predictability is, well, gone. Now, Lawrence Wong is prime minister, and the People's Action Party, the PAP, they did retain power. So on paper, it's business as usual, isn't it?
On paper, yes. But you have to look at the margins. The report calls the victory slimmer than ever. It talks about unprecedented turbulence.
And the opposition, the Workers' Party, they picked up 11 seats.
They did.
Okay, stop there for a second, because for anyone listening in the U.S. or the U.K., 11 seats sounds like nothing.
A rounding error.
Exactly. So why is this report treating it like an earthquake?
Because in Singapore's system, the PAP has held a supermajority forever, basically. Giving up 11 seats is a huge beachhead for the opposition, but it's more about what it signals, the shift in the voter psyche. It wasn't about ideology, it was fury.
Fury over what?
The basics, cost of living, housing, the whole Singapore promise, work hard, the system takes care of you. It feels broken to a lot of people.
There's one detail about the election that I found really counterintuitive. About the opposition leader, Pratam Singh. He was convicted for misleading Parliament.
Right.
Now, usually a criminal conviction is a career ender, especially in a place like Singapore. You'd think his party would just collapse.
You would. But the report highlights this fascinating paradox. His conviction actually galvanized anti-establishment sentiment. It backfired.
How so?
Instead of looking like a criminal, he was painted as this underdog fighting a monolithic system. It turned a legal issue into a story about the little guy versus the state.
A massive shift. And the voter stats seem to back this up. I read that turnout dipped to 92%.
Which, again, you need context. Voting is mandatory there.
You have to vote.
You have to. So a dip to 92% is significant. It's active apathy, people choosing to opt out.
But the stat that really got me was about the youth. A record 15% of voters under 30. They just didn't show up.
It points to a really deep disillusionment. The report cites the Gini coefficient at 0.375, but, the more visceral number is that millennial homeownership has dropped to 45%.
And if you can't afford a home in a country where public housing is the bedrock of society,
you feel like the system has left you behind. And they aren't just not voting, they're leaving.
the brain drain. The ICA data showed an 18% surge in immigration applications from professionals.
It's an exodus, and that's the so what for the economy. This political fragility, it hampers decision-making. The leadership is described as entangled in old politics. They're looking over their shoulder, and they can't pivot fast enough to deal with the external threats.
And that pivot speed is critical right now because those threats are huge. Okay, let's move to the physical economy. The ports. Singapore is the world's #2 container port. It's the crown jewel.
The heartbeat of the nation's economy.
Yeah. But the source says it's choking. Not just traffic. Gridlock.
This is the long tail of the Red Sea meltdown, the Houthi attacks.
Right.
Because of the security risks, 90% of all Suez Canal traffic had to reroute.
Around the Cape of Good Hope,
Yeah.
the long way around Africa.
Yeah, exactly. And when everyone takes a detour, they don't arrive nicely spaced out. They arrive in these huge bunches. So you get a 300% spike in volume hitting Singapore all at once. The port it couldn't handle it.
The stats here are wild. Off-dock arrivals are 90% late. Delays have hit 20 days. 20.
It's an eternity in just-in-time shipping. It just destroys supply chains.
Freight rates have tripled. Shippers lost, what, $1.2 billion in demurrage fees?
That's the fine for holding onto containers too long. It's like paying a parking ticket while you're stuck in traffic.
Unbelievable. But the real turning point, the thing that should make everyone sit up, it involves Maersk.
The shipping giant. In 2025, they made a strategic call to just bypass Singapore.
He skipped it entirely.
Rerouted to Batam in Indonesia to avoid the waits. That one decision cost Singapore roughly 500,000 TEUs in annual volume.
That feels like a watershed moment. When the big players decide your hub isn't worth the hassle, you're in real trouble.
And the neighbors are ready. Malaysia's port of Tanjung Pelepas is modernizing for these mega ships. And Batam
is just 30 kilometers away. You can see it on a clear day.
a stone's throw. And Indonesia is pumping millions into new cranes, new docks. They smell opportunity. So while Singapore is stuck, its rivals are rolling out the red carpet.
It's a classic disruption story. But speaking of disruption, let's get to the sector that was supposed to be the future, tech and AI. Singapore's got this National AI Strategy 2.0.
Sounds great on paper.
But the report says it's hitting a literal physical wall.
It's a physics problem. We think of AI and the cloud as, these ethereal things. But the cloud is just buildings full of hot servers.
And those servers need two things: a massive amount of electricity and a massive amount of water for cooling.
And Singapore is running out of both. The power grid is capped. There's a moratorium on new data centers. A 1.4 gigawatt limit.
A hard ceiling.
It is. But the water situation is even more shocking. The source estimates AI data centers could claim 35 to 50% of the country's entire water supply by 2030.
Wait, hold on. Up to half the water for
Yeah.
data centers.
Yes. A single 100 megawatt facility uses 4.2 million liters a day. You have to remember, Singapore has obsessed over water security for decades. This is an existential threat.
So the tech giants are doing what the shipping giants are doing.
They're looking next door. It's a tech exodus. NVIDIA and YTL are setting up in Johor, Malaysia. Microsoft is investing in Batam.
And then there's Google. Shelved a hyperscale project in Singapore, pivoted to Batam, and took over 5,000 jobs with them.
That's the great irony here. Singapore wants to be the brain of the region's tech scene, but the actual infrastructure, the servers, they're being forced to move to the neighbors who have the land, power, and water. Singapore risks becoming a general without an army.
It really shows how geography is still destiny, even in the digital age. But let's zoom out even further. So we have domestic politics, ports, tech, now geopolitics.
And you can't talk about that without talking about the Trump factor.
The 2025 re-election. The report is very clear about the impact of his 100% tariffs on China.
100%. It's a trade war nuclear option.
And you'd think, okay, that's a U.S.-China problem. But Singapore is the classic middleman.
It's the gateway. When over 10% of U.S.-bound goods flow through Singapore and suddenly everything is getting scrutinized to see if it's really Chinese, the friction just kills the trade.
So the trust void, the report mentions, it means companies just bypass the middleman entirely.
Exactly. Foreign direct investment is down 12%. U.S. firms are looking at Vietnam, at India. They want to avoid the headache.
So the world is squeezing from the outside, but at the same time, there's a ticking time bomb on the inside. Demographics.
This is the silent crisis. In 2026, this year, Singapore officially hits super-aged status.
Meaning 21% of the population is over 65.
It's a staggering number. And the dependency ratio is just 2.7 workers for every senior. The total fertility rate is, well, it's a dismal 0.97.
Not enough young people.
Not nearly enough to drive the economy. And then you look at the neighbors.
Indonesia.
Night and day, their median age is 30. Singapore's is 42.6. That's a massive workforce advantage for Indonesia. They have the energy, the people, the consumption power. Singapore is fighting demographic gravity.
Okay, so this is a frankly terrifying picture. It feels like the walls are closing in. But the report does ask, can the lion reinvent? They're not just sitting on their hands, right?
Oh, absolutely not. The Singaporean government is famous for its long-term planning. The report talks about Forward SG 2.0 and the 2026 budget.
Right, the $25 billion in sweeteners,
Yeah.
GST rebates, housing grants, trying to patch that social contract.
They are. And strategically, they're trying to diversify trade, push towards India and the EU to get away from that US-China corridor, and they have plans to import green energy.
Like hydro from Laos, which is like running a giant extension cord across Southeast Asia.
It is. It shows you the desperation for power. And for the ports, they're betting everything on the Tuas megaport.
The fully automated one.
Yes. If you don't have young dock workers, you build robots. They're also trying to attract skilled immigrants, aiming for 50,000 a year.
But is it enough? Is it too little, too late?
That is the ultimate question. It's a race against time. The government is trying to turn a massive ship in a very narrow channel. And if these reforms don't work perfectly and quickly, the report warns Singapore risks a Japan-style lost decade.
Or just fading into irrelevance.
Exactly. If your neighbors build better ports, cheaper data centers, and have younger workforces, why would you pay the Singapore premium?
That premium evaporates.
Why pay the markup if the port is slow and the power is capped?
It's a sobering thought. So let's recap this perfect storm. We have political cracks at home, ports clogged by war and rivals, tech giants leaving for cheaper resources, and a demographic time bomb.
It's a convergence of geography, geopolitics, and demographics, all hitting at once.
And for you, our listeners, I think the relevance here goes way beyond just one city-state. This isn't just Singapore's story.
Not at all. It's a case study in fragility. It shows how fast global dominance can shift. We think of the status quo as permanent. Singapore is the hub because it's always been the hub, but this shows that when the underlying variables change trade routes, resource availability, population, that dominance can vanish in just a few years.
A reminder that no one is too big or too efficient to fail.
And it raises a bigger question about globalization. Singapore mastered the old game. Free trade, open borders, efficiency above all. But if the world is shifting toward protectionism and resilience, the old master might be playing the wrong game.
That's a powerful thought to leave us with. If Singapore, the absolute master of planning, can be besieged by these forces, what does that signal for other global hubs that are still playing by the old rules? The lion is roaring, but...
We have to ask, is it a roar of power or is it a cry for help?
A cry for help. That's going to stick with me. We'll leave you with that thought to mull over. Thanks for diving deep with us today.
A pleasure as always.
See you next time.